Yeah, if you think someone at home is called Nike and they're the ones making the decisions to hire you, that's not going to happen. Can this person execute on this? Can they execute on their idea that they're going to pitch?
Is he cool?
Yeah, is he cool? And like, can I spend time with them? Right? It's like,
Yeah.
is this the right person? Because the worst thing you can do is just end up pitching something that like they didn't even want that in the first place or at all. And so that's why the big problem is like, how come I'm not getting these big clients? How come they're not coming to me yet? And it's because like the client doesn't hold the power, right? It's like the agency holds the power. And so if you're not even talking to an agency, if you're not doing lunch and learns, if you're not connecting or networking, or if you don't even know an agency exists, then you're never just going to be in that conversation. Welcome back to the Unfold podcast. Today we're talking about why you're not getting big clients and the real secret behind it. So a lot of people don't talk about this. We're going to keep this one really tight and interesting because when people start to hear about it and get a better understanding of it, they start to realize like, oh, this was just something I never knew about. And I know I had to actually cover and like get past these barriers first. And then it all kind of like connects. And we're actually going to be talking about agencies today.
Whoa.
And more so about how the whole structure of getting larger jobs work. And it's not as simple as just being like, hi, Nike, can I work for you? There's actually a system, a structure to how this industry works. There's a gold standard to it as well. And we're going to talk into that today. So this is Wanjo. I'm Jason from Tenfold. And yeah, let's dive right into it.
Yeah. So I think it's like a classic, I don't want to say trope, but I've seen so many like either like TikToks or whatever that are always like posting my work every day until Nike hires me for a job. And evidently that's not how that works because Nike, the entity, is never going to be scrolling on TikTok and being like, this guy should shoot my shoe commercial.
Yeah, if you think someone at home is called Nike and they're the ones making the decisions to hire you, that's not going to happen. I think that's kind of like what we thought was the path in the beginning too.
I think everyone did. It's just like hitting
Yeah.
at Nike with the, let me work for you.
Yeah, that's like the classic. Like, hi Nike, I love what you guys are doing. Would love to work with you one day. And it's like, okay, you're just gonna get ghosted.
Yeah.
Or just like you get this like bot response. Or sometimes people get the bot response and they're like,
I'm in.
Nike responded to me. Yeah. Or you get the response that like is hey, thanks for reaching out. Like, we'll definitely send this to our team and let you know if anything comes up. Guess what? Nothing ever comes up. I don't think I've ever seen someone come back and be like, you messaged me 12 years ago and you sent that one message and now you've proven to yourself, like proven to us that like, we can actually work with you. Like that's kind of the big myth here. And like the things that we want to dispel today is just getting over that hump of like, this is actually not how these companies work. And to figure that out is probably a skill in its own that like you need to just work in a very specific area of your, commercial filmmaking or direct documentary filmmaking, whatever it is. So yeah, let's dive into part one of that.
Yeah.
So the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that companies like Nike don't work as a singular entity. The company is so big at this point that, there's so many different divisions. There's so many like global brand, whatever it is, that like the window down to people that are working with agencies more or less, right? So like you have like these top brand people that hire out an agency, and an agency just being like a separated company.
It's like the middleman.
Yeah, it's like a middleman more or less. But they most of the times don't go direct to client anymore or direct to, someone like us, like a production company, because there's so much in the middle that people don't realize that you need to get through first. And that's typically the creative and actually just getting a good idea out there, right?
Yep.
Most companies like Nike, for example, don't come to a production company to have them do the ideas, being the creative director and all these things, as well as the production company, because it means that you're not as specialized as you should be. And like in most cases, like we always talk about, specializing is always the biggest thing that you want to get down to.
Yeah.
Right. And so it kind of hits in a lot of different areas. Most agencies have like an agency of record, but they can be broken down into a lot of different areas as well. And then from there, the agency is really the one that end up connecting and figuring out which production company they want to work with. But more so, they want to do it through understanding who and which director is being repped by that production company.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, too, it's like the production company is just this holding that exists that is there to support the rest of the production pretty much. And then the director is mainly the person that they want directing. Like they want their ideas to actually exist in there. So to go one step back up, most of the times a company like Nike work with like an agency, and then an agency will look at 3 different directors and be like, okay, we've built this idea at the agency. Nike loves it. They've been working on this for 6 months or whatever. And now we have a fundamentals of like, this is what the campaign should feel like and look like for our upcoming launch, whatever it is. And then they'll go out and reach out to 3 different production companies, because then there's maybe a sports director in company 1, company 2, company 3. And then from there, these agencies will introduce and do like a pitch to these directors' brief, more or less. And then each of these companies are going to talk to the director. They're all going to be in that conversation together with their EP, executive producer, as well as their producer and a director, all kind of getting this information at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a team, this one production company, each individually, will go back and be like, okay, from this brief, now the goal is to figure out, what this director's treatment is going to look like. Because then now it's up to the director to pitch it back to them. So in this case, everyone has such a specialty in this, where a producer is going to think about what the budget's going to look like. An executive producer is going to think about kind of like the holistic view of how this is going to go down. And then their goal is to actually support the director and give them the resources to actually create this director's treatment. And oftentimes you might only get like 2 days or 3 days. Maybe you'll get like 2 weeks if they have like an extended work back schedule. But it is up to the director's job to immediately take everything from that director's brief, turn it into something that's tangible, articulating a good vision, and like actually showcase what their goals and like what they actually expect this project to look like. And it's their goal now to like either work with a treatment designer or like a graphic designer, and then like a treatment writer as well, unless they like to write themselves, to actually create something that's cohesive, that looks good, that is up to par with the agency as well as the brand. So in this case, you might make like a 25-page or a 50-page kind of breakdown for Nike or their agency, and you're competing against someone else and 2 other companies, more or less, in your triple bid to actually fight for this project. And so you can already expect like how much money is being spent across the board to get the best director for the best project, because they've already spent so much time, this agency and this client has already spent so much time trying to make the best project and idea. They don't even think about logistics, right? Like how this project's actually going to go down. They're hoping that the director and the company that actually gets picked on and awarded for this are the ones that actually deal with all the logistics, how to deal with all the back end, and hopefully the director is the one that brings the best ideas.
Okay, so that was a lot.
That's a lot.
But let's try and break it down a little bit more. So there's 3 parties involved here, and let's continue on with like this whole Nike example. So there's the client, Nike, there's the middleman being the agency, and then lastly there's 1 to 3 to whatever amount of production companies / directors.
Yeah.
So amongst these 3 parties, who is the one who's coming up with the creative behind either the campaign or the project?
Yeah.
Is it the client, or is it the director, the agency? Who's responsible for that?
So the company being so big, they actually hire these creative agencies, more or less, to actually handle all their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so Nike might be like, hey, we're releasing X product in the fall.
Yeah.
And now it's up to the agency's goals to kind of get their brief and then work on figuring out what their campaign is going to look like, what their launch is, marketing, all these things. And then it just comes down to passing that off into the production company's level to figure out exactly how it's going to be executed. So oftentimes we'll get a brief, for example, and you get like the top level in terms of like, here's a storyboard, here's the idea, here's the goals, and like what the client kind of wants out of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes the director's goal to come in and be like, okay, I might actually approach these shots and these transitions this way. Like, I think this might tonality be a little bit like a little bit darker or moodier, or like brighter and poppy with like these types of transitions. Like, it's the director's job really to figure out, taking the director's brief and figuring out how to actually expand that to an actual commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Because more or less you're just getting like maybe 8 stills that, is their vision of like storyboard. And now it's like, how does that actually come to life? How would I approach that? And how would I bring my unique taste to it?
So let's talk about this director's brief that you just mentioned. If I was a sports director at company A, and I was contacted by this agency to do this Nike campaign, and they send me a director's brief, that's probably how it goes down, right? What should I expect to see within this director's brief? Is it like a paragraph explaining what's going on? Is it like a bigger deck? Like what am I seeing?
So there's a wide range of this as well.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen some that are super short, some that are much longer and much more fleshed out. It really depends on the agency and how they approach things. and kind of what scale they kind of like to pass it off. Right. We've seen some that are like extremely boarded out, and you have all the details there, all the shots, all the angles. And at that point, it just becomes your goal to kind of like execute and make sure it like visually it aligns with what the brand is going for and what everything. But sometimes we get briefs that are completely open and like there's no visual attachment to it, just like a mood board. And so you get this sense of like, okay, you kind of want this. Do you want to match it up with the brand? And then it becomes your goal to like come back and like repitch back something that's a little bit more interesting. In most cases, whenever you get a director's brief and you're the one that's like shortlisted down for it, you're gonna be put into a call, right? Like same thing as it being both ways, where like you present back to them in the beginning, they want to be on a call with you, understand who you are. They're really just feeling you out as well. It's like, can this person execute on this? Can they execute on their idea that they're gonna pitch?
Is he cool?
Yeah, is he cool? And like, can I spend time with them? Right? It's like, is this the right person? And obviously it goes back to like making sure like everything else is aligned in your branding and who you are and everything, because this meeting is probably the most crucial one. And then moving from this into your actual like pitch back, like this is going to be the main one, because you need to actually ask all the right questions. You're trying to field everything out. You're actually trying to show interest as well, like genuine interest, right? Like think about like any commercial can come down the line for you. And if it's like a mayonnaise commercial, if you're trying to win the job, you still have to make sure that you're interested in this and that you actually care. And you're trying to find ways, even if you're like, you're not like in love with mayo, but there's still ways you can find ways to like make it interesting for yourself. And like maybe it starts to align with you in different ways of like how you want to execute it or how you want to approach it, for example. So it really becomes a mix. But this opening call is everything, right? Like they're feeling you out for your energy. Are you attentive? Do you care? Can you connect to it? Do you see where their vision is going?
Yeah.
Because you got to remember too, it's like before this meeting, they've probably been searching for maybe 2 or 3 weeks on like which director's angles they want to go at, but more or less, they've been probably spending like the last 3 to 6 to 8 months or whatever, focusing just on getting the right ideas and working back and forth with the client. So at that point, you're pretty much locked in already. It's down to 3 people, and like if they like your general direction, they've seen your portfolio and all these things beforehand, you typically get shortlisted down, and that's why you're in that call in the first place. And oftentimes that means like you're already beaten out on like probably like 50 other directors already. And so now it's just your goal to be like, there's kind of like more pressure on you to take it in and be like, I'm trying to bring my best self to this call, show that you're excited, show that you're interested, and then asking the right questions too. Yeah. Because the questions are equally as important in the sense that like if you don't properly field your questions, you don't want to come back to them again and keep asking them questions and badgering them, because it means like you didn't really think about it thoroughly enough in the first single call. And then even when you get into like the pricing and the quoting and everything, as well as your director's treatment, if you have missing gaps, it means that you can't properly quote things out, or you won't even be able to speak to the idea clearly enough, because you can actually do so much of your director treatment, realize that you're like, oh, I don't actually know if this was the angle. Like, are they okay with this angle? Like, if you wanted to go and push this to something a little bit more like, like maybe dark and moody or like more transition heavy, and like the company doesn't typically lean that way, it's like there's probably ways to like ask that up front so you don't get caught in the back end. Because the worst thing you can do is just end up pitching something that like they didn't even want that in the first place or at all. And now you're just like digging deeper and deeper. You're like, oh, they're not reacting the way I want, but I'm just going to keep going at this. And hopefully at the end of it, like, it just means you didn't like articulate or understand their process enough or their side of things enough that you kind of just went wild and did your own thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So obviously this agency world is like much deeper rabbit hole than like anyone could possibly expect when they're first getting into this industry. And we could probably talk about this for hours, but I think if I were to narrow it down to like the most important question for someone who's like in my position, what do you have to do as a director to get on the radar of these agencies? And how do I position myself to be able to, do I reach out to them? Do they reach out to me? What do I have to do for them to reach out to me? What is the whole process like to actually like communicating to agencies?
Yeah, this is a varied path, and we had to go through this as well because we are a production company that's a little bit more nimble in that sense. We didn't kind of come up through like the standard like ACCP world, which is like, you either pay into it and like you get certain boards that come through that system. We came through it as like individual filmmakers becoming a production company.
Mm-hmm.
And then we didn't even realize what a production company entailed until like years down the line when we started to get a little bit more into this agency world and understanding how like the triple bid process works and all these things. Because we were just getting more or less, and most people probably started in this place too, where you just say you're a production company and then you start reaching out to like direct to client stuff, like maybe smaller brands or like local small businesses and all these things. And like the mix is like in the beginning, you're pretty much doing that 100%, right? You don't even know this other world exists yet.
Yeah.
And so that's why the big problem is like, how come I'm not getting these big clients? How come they're not coming to me yet? And it's because like the client doesn't hold the power, right? It's like the agency holds the power. And so if you're not even talking to an agency, if you're not doing lunch and learns, if you're not connecting or networking, or if you don't even know an agency exists, then you're never just going to be in that conversation. And so you're just like left out of the loop, hoping that like one day someone's going to reach out. But then you start to realize over time, it's like an agency reaches out to you and they're like, hey, we're doing this project for X company. And you're like, oh, there's the connect. And then you go online and research like this company is the agency of record for this company, right? And then like that's where the boundaries start to mesh over. And you're like, oh, so that's how I actually get there. But in the beginning, when you're just starting out, it's like, it makes it very difficult. There's two paths in this as well, which is say you're a director, right? And you're coming up into the space right now. If you start to work a lot on yourself and you work on enough projects that actually build enough of a stronger reel, right? And not just like a sizzle reel, more so like you have 5 strong pieces that represent who you are and your style, then you start to have production companies reach out to you. Or you have production companies that like quietly, like they pitch your name even though you're not repped underneath them. And like going the whole rep conversation, that's a whole different world as well. But the way we did it is different from the standard route. Because the director can go in 2 different ways, like build your own company, or you just like be a standalone director. And then you just, your goal as a director now becomes working with producers, executive producers to like see who wants to rep you and stuff like that. And then that kind of opens up a whole new box for everything.
Interesting. I think this has just opened up a million more conversations we could have about this topic.
Yeah.
But I think maybe we should end it there for now.
Yeah, this is just a small piece of the pie when it comes to how the production world kind of like opens up to everyone. And eventually you do get to know all these little pieces. Depends on which path you want to take. But ultimately, we're here to kind of expose them and talk about them and just see how like you can actually build your career on this versus just like guessing your way through it. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions when it comes to how the system works, how to get jobs for bigger clients, stuff like that, feel free to drop a message on the podcast. I think you can do that, as well as like drop a message on our YouTube channel. We'll get back to you, and then maybe we'll turn it into another podcast into the future.
Cool.
Sweet. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Peace.